here with Art the Ace Chambers, and I would like to ask you a couple quick questions about what it was like really getting going. So what was your first experience with jet skis?
Well, just like everyone back in the day, we started getting into jet skis before there were races. So back in 1980, we picked up a Kawasaki 440. We were water skiers at the time and picked up a jet ski and rode it for probably about a year, and then heard about a race in Manteca, California. And so we went to that race and met Larry Ripper-Kruger and Mike Costucci and Derek Peterson and Tony Corey, all these old school guys, all from Sacramento area. Learned what you could really do on a jet ski, and then one race led to another, which led to another year, and 20 years later, it kind of become a career. So it went from something fun to a full-blown career.
So what was your first jet ski?
Yeah, back then you only had one choice, and that was a Kawasaki 440. That was the only. About 4 years later, they came out with, a couple years later, I guess they came out with the 550. So the JS 440 was the very first, JS 550 was number 2.
Yeah. So what's one of your fondest memories involving jet skis?
Back in the old days, just going on tour was more of a summer vacation. It was a bunch of guys that were a little bit older back then, because most of the guys didn't have parents that were into jet skiing, because jet skiing wasn't even invented then. So these were mid-20-year-old guys and taking summer vacation off. And so the whole tour was basically a big, long summer vacation. And you'd roll to a town, and you'd spend all week playing around, and then you'd race on the weekend, and then you'd roll to the next town, and you did that for 6 months. So just that whole... Everybody, we used to rent houses together, and Larry Ripper-Kruger, David Gordon, and Costucci, and guys that all competed against each other. We'd be hanging out all week, staying in the same house, and so it was just that whole family thing in the early years. It was really good time.
Which tour stop did you do back then?
Back in the old days, there was 22, 24 nationals in a year. So we'd start in May and run clear to the World Finals. And so basically all over the United States, we'd go from here to Florida, to Chicago, to Minnesota, to West Virginia, to Tallahassee, to Texas. I mean, we were all over the whole country. And so I think we were doing, we'd burn 5,000 to 6,000 miles in a tour, so we were putting some miles on the box units.
So what impact has jet skiing had on your life?
This is interesting, because I just was analyzing this the other day, and I realized that jet skiing started off as something fun. And when I graduated college, my first job was with a jet ski friend who was an electrician. So I went to work for Sal Creekio and worked for him for a number of years. Then I became my own boss for about 20 years racing. And then when I got done racing, I started working for Eddie Shimon at a company as a project manager. He too was a jet skier. Was there for 10 years. Then I went to work for Dave Robeson, who was my mechanic for 20 years at Go-Kart Racer, again a jet skier. And now I recently got another new job with a friend, Mike Wash, who was an old-time racer as well. So throughout my whole career, every job that I've ever had and every boss that I've ever had has come from the jet skis. So jet skiing not only has given me a lifelong career of many different jobs, it's also given me my wife and my son. So in one shape or form or another, jet skiing has basically formed my entire life.
That's pretty amazing. So do you think the sport could get as big as it once was?
No, I don't think so. I think at this point, the sport is kind of back to its grassroots stage, and I don't know that it'll ever grow as big as it was. That was kind of the sun and the moon and everything lining up. ESPN was just getting started, and Budweiser was a title sponsor. All the factories were just releasing their boats, so you had factory support everywhere. So that's what really made this thing grow, where it did, was just the fact that there was all that money. Since then, things have pulled back. Internationally, it's still real big, but in the States, I don't think you'll ever see as large as it was back in the in the heyday in the 90s.
So, what's your best tip for riders today?
I think it's just like it's always been, just practice. Just riding. One thing I see a lot of the juniors do, and they make a little bit of a mistake. Everybody wants to go fast, and what people forget is speed is secondary. The very first thing you need to learn is how to be smooth and and consistent, and speed will come. So that's one thing that we try and teach our son. Brenda and I were both, not the fastest, craziest riders like your Riases and like McCluggins and Farthings, but we were smart and we were smooth. And if you're smart and smooth, speed eventually comes. So I'd say focus on the fundamentals and just try and be smooth and have fun. Gotta have fun.
So how did you first meet Brenda Burns, who is also a world champion jet skier?
Yeah, Brenda was started way before me. She started in the late 70s. And so we were at a race. I think we met for the first time in Long Beach in about 86. And that's when we started hanging out. She was obviously there racing and was already a world champion at that point. And that year she didn't go on tour, so I didn't see her again until the World Finals. We hung out a lot at the World Finals. The next year we both did go on tour. That was 1987. And we ended up hooking up that year and starting a relationship. And 28 years, yeah,
Wow.
28 years later, we're still cruising.
So the big scary question, she's not here right now. Who is the faster rider?
Oh, it depends on the craft, I think. If we both got on 440s, she'd be faster. She's really smooth on a stand-up, old school 440, 550. She always had that, leg switching, real smooth, real fast. You get on an X2, on a limited X2, she runs pretty hard too. But you get onto a mod X2 where it takes a little bit of upper body strength. I could usually push a little bit harder on a mod X2, but on an old school 440, I'd have to give it to her.
So we already covered a little bit of what it was like going on tour, but just so people that don't know, you've got 13 ISGJBA tours, racing internationally, and achieve an amazing record like 7 world titles, 17 national titles, 7 international, 9 state, and a laundry list more that we couldn't even probably get on video with how much it is. What was it like just on tour all that time and then going back to regular life?
Right. To be honest, it's just like anything. People look at a situation and say, wow, that's something I'd love to do. And it is fun, and it was fun for all those years, but traveling gets tiring, and Brenda had retired before me. I had bought a house, and there comes a point where you just want to stay home and work on the house and hang out with your mate, and the touring just became too much. So I was glad. I did step out for a number of years and started managing. I managed one of the factory Sea-Doo teams, and that ended up being 10 times the effort that it was, working on your own. When you're on your own program, you have yourself to take care of and your gear. When you're a team manager, I had 4 riders and 15 mechanics and all this craziness, and so that was not so fun. But no, I think it was refreshing to stop, and take a break, and we were out for probably 13, 14, 15 years that we took a little break, and then along comes Talon, and it's time to do it all over again. So yeah, now we're excited to get re-involved.
Awesome. Really appreciate this interview, and probably 15 years or so from now we'll be doing another one with your son.
There you go. That'll be the plan. So all right.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.